This and this is an incredibly important lesson that has taken me almost 40 years to learn. Honestly, well, I'll give myself credit for being a kid, so let's say maybe 20 years to learn. When we let things slide to keep the peace, we are essentially disowning that part of ourself that says, this is disrupting me. I'm going to ignore this because if I don't, some type of punishment is going to happen, whether it's self-punishment, being afraid of being punished from outside forces, being afraid of the universal punishment, being afraid of some kind of conflict, whatever it be, whatever that negative emotion is tied to, because you want to keep the peace, it only hurts you in the end, because it starts a war inside of yourself, because you are denying yourself the right to express what you truly need, want, feel, especially need. If you are denying yourself the right of things that you need by keeping the peace, you are starting a war inside of you. And that is a big war, my friend. It is a big war, and it has so many effects outside of just one thing. It infiltrates our entire system, and how many other times we do that, a piece of us breaks off, and a piece of us breaks off there, and it breaks off here, and it creates more internal trauma. We create more internal trauma by keeping the peace than if we would have just said something. And that doesn't mean you have to have a blow up. That doesn't mean you have to scream at anybody. That doesn't mean that you have to just go full throttle 100%. What it means is stand up for yourself. You can stand up for yourself eloquently. You can stand up for yourself quietly. You can stand up for yourself in a very matter-of-fact way with what is at least the truth from the way that you see it. You can ask another person to be open or receptive to at least listening to what you have to say. But when you stay silent and let things slide to keep the peace, you are then creating a war inside of yourself. Thank you, Mel Robbins, for this post, because this is massive. This is something for a great many deal of people pleasers who need to see this. We need reminded very consistently that when we just let things slide, we aren't truly working on them, and we aren't truly standing in our power. We're giving our power up to somebody else. So I urge any of you who just let things slide to keep the peace, really dig deep inside of yourself and ask yourself, why am I letting this happen? And what can I do to move forward and change the pattern and do it differently without causing conflict? Because a lot of times the reason we let things slide is because we cannot handle conflict. And who says there has to be conflict? A lot of times we create the conflict before it even happens. Sometimes just by being open and having a conversation, conflict may never happen. So before we create the scenarios in our mind, which many people pleasers, neurodivergent people, we do that. We create every single hypervigilant scenario that we can that could potentially happen if we said something about this one thing that we let slide. What would happen if we went ahead and talked about it? What would happen if we approached it with even a form of compassionate communication? Even if the other person is not a compassionate communicator, even if they aren't trauma informed, even if they aren't, anything under the sun, what would happen if we went ahead and addressed whatever it was, but we addressed it in a way that wasn't coming at the other person full throttle with anger or rage or frustration or anything like that, and we kept it neutral? If we approached it from a neutral state, what could we open up for ourselves instead of starting the war inside of us? Thank you, Mel Robbins, for this. This is massive, and this is something that needs to be shouted from the rooftops. And I wanted to share it with anybody else who needed to see it. And if you needed to see this today, please let me know, because this is huge. And you're seeing me in a totally different form than you've ever seen me before, because these are the things that really get me going, because it's about what's going on in here and how can you soothe that part inside of you. And if you're soothing it by just letting things slide, imagine how much that's stirring up inside of you. What can you do to take care of those things without inciting conflict? Because I know a lot of times that's what we're really scared of, is the conflict. We can address things without creating conflict. And if it leads to a point of conflict, all we have to do, we can excuse ourselves. Even if we feel that heightened state of emotion. Okay, I'm disengaging. I'm removing myself from the situation. Maybe we can revisit it later. But for right now, we need to table it. We have choices. We have choices. And let's take the choice to not keep a war or start a war inside of ourselves because we wanted to just let something slide because we were afraid of conflict. We've got this. We can do it. It may be hard, but once you're in the practice of it, it becomes a lot easier. And we start learning to look at things from other people's perspectives so we can take a neutral stance in order to ensure that we are also feeling safe, not only in ourselves, but safe in our conversations and communication, while also holding our boundaries strong. So thank you all for watching this. I love you. And thank you, Mel Robbins, for posting this, because you're fucking amazing. Thank you.